Pretty dismal performance last night for Sacramento, though it was preseason, but we got to break down some of that. But it is Monday. It is Niners at 9, and it's time to bring in our guy from The Athletic who's covered the Niners so effectively and efficiently for so many years now with The Athletic, all brought to you by Stockton Honda. We welcome in Matt Barrows. Matt, it's Jason. How are you this morning?
Hi, Jason. I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing well. How did you spend? I know you worked all last week. How did you spend what is equivalent of an open weekend without Niners football?
I enjoyed what in our household is called Bro Day. And it's a day where you just watch fantasy football all day long. And I do this with my nieces who are huge 49ers fans and huge fantasy football fans. So it's a day of eating nachos and watching football. It's just like the American dream, really.
That's a pretty good day. You don't get that day enough. Maybe twice
No.
a season?
What's that?
Maybe twice a season?
Yeah, maybe twice a season. Bro Day was, these are 17-year-old high school girls who are big volleyball players. They are applying to. I applied when I was in high school. I applied to 2 universities. These girls are like playing to 20, so their calendars are chock full. So Bro Day had to be placed at the exact right time, and so we settled on October 13. That's been in the calendar for months and months.
I gotta go. Nachos are about the most variety of things. What's like the mainstay on your nachos?
Well, it's mainly well, there are a couple of varieties, but it was beans and cheese was the hit, and of course a guac too.
There you go,
guacamole.
Can't go wrong. Well, how about the Niners on Thursday? It was it was going smooth sailing for a while. Then it was going down an all too familiar road. I think it's important that it didn't go the exact same way as that Cardinals game and Rams game did. But what was different? How did they avoid what has seemingly been a little bit of a season trap for them?
Yeah, well, they got a stopper. I mean, they were starting to circle the drain just like against the Cardinals and the Rams, and then they got the interception from Renardo Green. So they got the play that changed the bad momentum against them, and I thought it was very appropriate that that play was delivered by a rookie. It's sort of a theme in this game. 8 different rookies played, and at least 4 of them just really stood out with their performances. Renardo Green probably first among them. Dominic Pooney had another really good, really veteran-like, consistent game. I think he's going to be somebody we are watching on Sunday against the Chiefs when Chris Jones is in town. And then Pooney opened up a big hole for Isaac Guerendo. I thought that Jordan Mason's injury, gave Guerendo more carries, and that's what he needs. He needs to gain experience, and through that experience, he's gaining the trust of Bobby Turner, the running backs coach, and the rest of the coaching staff. And so I think we're seeing that piecemeal, basically carry by carry with Guerendo. And then the last guy was Malik Mustafa, who stopped that initial drive. The Seahawks were marching on their first drive. Were about to score at least a field goal, and he came up with that interception. So the rookie magic, and that's something you rarely say in the Kyle Shanahan era. It's very, very uncommon that a single rookie is playing this early in the season, much less 8.
Matt Barrows joining us from The Athletic. You mentioned Mason. He was running the ball well before the injury. What's his status? What's the update with Mason?
We got what's called a bonus practice later today, so we'll see if he's out there. It's a sprained AC joint. It doesn't seem like it's a severe sprain, but it was enough to keep him out of the second half of what became a tight game in Seattle. So it's fairly significant. I doubt he practices today. Usually if you're dealing with any sort of ailment, you're not part of that Monday practice. But a lot of guys who aren't part of Monday do come back on the Wednesday coming out of these Thursday games. So don't blow up your fantasy lineup if you have Jordan Mason. If you hear that he's not practicing today, because he could be back on Wednesday. Basically, we're going to find out a lot of injury stuff. Ricky Pearsall might be back at this practice. John Feliciano, the interior offensive lineman, signaled on Twitter this morning that he could be back or close to being back. So could be some significant guys part of that group today.
You mentioned fantasy football. They kind of got the same fantasy results and in-game results that they were getting from Moody with Matthew Wright, 3 field goals. Then he gets hurt in the game. Where are the Niners looking at kicking-wise in the Chiefs week this week?
Yeah, he's sort of day-to-day as well with a dislocated shoulder. Very possible that they have a third kicker in as many weeks. I think sort of, I don't want to say exacerbating that is the fact that each of his kickoffs were short. I think he only had one that went into the end zone. The rest either hit the goal line or were short of the goal line. And, that's part of the reason why they had a 97-yarder against them. So, I mean, that's something that I think has to concern the 49ers. So if he's already dealing with a shoulder injury and he can't kick it into the end zone, that's a bad combination, because that means that your kicker, as the 49ers have seen, is going to be having to make some tackles, or at least attempt some. One easy solution would be to have Mitch Wishnowsky do the kickoffs. He hasn't been great at that either. But I wonder if it's just for 1 week or something like that, he'd be able to do it. Aussie football guy knows how to tackle, so I don't think you'd have the same injury concerns as you would a 165-pound kicker.
Man, this team has goals of holding the Super Bowl trophy at the end of the year, and I thought one thing that could keep them from doing that has been a consistent problem, I would say, since last year, has been the run defense. But if there was a real bright spot, I thought in the Seahawks game, their run defense was much better in that Seahawks game. Anything structurally, just kind of a matchup thing? I know it's something they've worked on, but what did you see on that particular aspect of how good their rush defense was?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's something that they were coming out of that Cardinals game and had gotten really run over in the second half by James Conner. And so they made that a focus going into the week. And I think that they knew that, conversely, the Seahawks would make getting the ball to Kenneth Walker their focus. That had been a big critique of the previous loss for the Seahawks, that they got away from the running game, that Walker only got a handful of carries. So it was pretty clear what the Seahawks were going to do, what they were going to establish. And usually in those scenarios, the 49ers are good, that they can they certainly have the personnel to take out one runner. And that was what was sort of bothersome about the Connor game, is that they knew Connor was going to get the ball a lot in the second half. They just couldn't bring him to the ground. Nick Bosa had said something about scheme issues and not being able to pivot during a game. He backed away from that later in the week. In the Cardinals game, they were there. They were, there were guys around James Conner. They just couldn't tackle him. And so that was a lot better against the Seahawks. I thought that the safeties played a lot better. They sort of stood out in the Cardinals game, not being able to get him to the ground. They were more stout on their tackling. It was just more gang tackling, better tackling all around versus Seattle. So I think that was the 49ers had always looked at those two games as twins, and they certainly did better defensively on the second game than they did the first.
So I'm thinking back to a year ago, Matt, where the Niners really had spent a lot of that offseason talking about the loss to the Eagles and, hey, if Brock didn't get hurt and so on and so forth. And I thought, boy, they're talking a lot about a game that they lost, but we knew it meant a lot to them. Then they go and play Philly and absolutely smashed them last year. So now it's Chiefs week. We know what they've done to the Niners in the last two Super Bowls. They'll probably try to make this like any other game, but I don't know how they do that. You know these guys so well, the coaches, the players. What do you think their approach is going to be in trying to make this like any other game this week?
Yeah, I mean, the Eagles game was something different, I think. There were layers. There were so many layers to that loss. I mean, Debo had the battles with the Eagles defensive backs that lasted into the offseason. Bad blood. There was a lot of incidents involving friends and family of 49ers in the stands in Philadelphia. This is going to come as a shock to you, Jason, but the Eagles fans weren't very friendly in that game.
Don't tell.
So there was a lot, and they absolutely circled that game from the get-go. I don't feel as if, or at least the week's just starting, we'll have to see, but I don't get that sense about the Chiefs game. I don't know whether it's because they're in the AFC or what, but as far as beating them, um, I think a healthy Jordan Mason would go a long way to that. Just becoming very, I don't want to say basic, but really using Mason and the running game, and just breaking down that defense over the course of a game, so that at the end you're the team that's got the momentum. You're the team that is pushing the initiative. In the two Super Bowl losses, it's been 49ers take a lead, and then the Chiefs absolutely take momentum by the end of the third quarter, and the 49ers are just hanging on for dear life. So, and, you put Patrick Mahomes in that scenario, he wins 19 times out of 20. So you just have to figure out a way to avoid that scenario. Like I said, the Pooney versus Chris Jones matchup, I think, is interesting to me because Chris Jones really hasn't had great opponents. I mean, the 49ers have tried to band-aid that right guard position over the years. From 2017 on, really, it's been a sort of a journeyman in that spot. That's where they tend to go cheap. They didn't go cheap there this year. I mean, it wasn't by design exactly. I don't think that they thought about Pooney playing that right guard spot when they drafted him. But that's where he's ended up, and he's played very well. So it's a better guard situation than Chris Jones has ever faced when he's faced the 49ers.
You brought up Pearsall a little bit earlier, and I think there's a lot of anticipation on what he could be. The offense already has a lot of powerful skill players, but what do you think the vision is of Kyle Shanahan, of McCaffrey, let's say there, and Mason doing still what he's doing with Debo, Kittle, Jennings, Ayuk, all the way down the line, and Pearsall? Like, what do you think the vision is for Pearsall, even when everybody's healthy?
Yeah, when everybody's healthy, I mean, I just first you have to go back to, on top of the gunshot incident, he hadn't practiced much in training camp. He had a hamstring injury to start out, then he had a shoulder injury midway through. It left him with maybe, I don't know, 10 practice days from late July until the start of the season. So I think that his ramp up is going to be bigger than maybe what people are anticipating. I think they start his practice window today, but it might be a few weeks until he's actually activated and on the field. And at that point, if everybody's healthy, he's just part of the rotation. So like what you've seen from Ronnie Bell, for example, you would see from Ricky Pearsall. So I don't know what that is. Averages maybe 10 snaps a game, maybe even a little less. Okay. But if a Debo Samuel or a Brandon Ayuk or a Juwan Jennings got hurt and had to miss a few games, then I think Pearsall becomes the top guy to really work in and get significant snaps in there. Your other question about, what happens when Christian McCaffrey comes back?
Yeah.
Because, Jordan Mason is, I don't know where he stands today. I haven't checked the standings, but obviously at the top of the NFL standings as far as rushing yards. You just can't bench somebody in that position. There has to be some sort of rotation. And that's going to be something that the 49ers have to figure out, because these two things are true. The offense with McCaffrey is fantastic, and he scores touchdowns in the red zone. And they really reach a height with him that they haven't been able to reach. At the same time, Mason's been awesome. He's been really a rock for this team. So that's going to be an interesting line for the 49ers to find when both of those guys are back and healthy, which probably will be after the bye, but that's still half the season.
Yeah, and if they can, maybe take a little bit of the wear and tear off McCaffrey, but get him down in that red zone, maybe that's the thought process. But again, I think Kyle Shanahan will figure that out. But he knows he's got more weapons now, which is a good thing for him.
Yeah, and I think the second half of the season team is going to look different and maybe markedly different than the first half of the season team. You got major players coming back, and with Christian McCaffrey on offense and Dre Greenlaw on defense, those are big additions that could really give this team a boost. That's assuming that there are no more injuries during this time period, and that might be too rosy an assumption.
Yeah. Well, Matt, we look forward to the analysis next Monday after the Chiefs game. Should be a fun week. We appreciate you each and every week, and hopefully you have some leftover nachos remaining for you today.
I'll bring them by the studio. Yeah.
Please do. I'm sure they'll hold up well. Thank you, Matt.
All right. Talk to you.
All right. That's Matt Barrows from The Athletic, all brought to you by Stockton Honda. Break time for us. We'll come back. Another look back at the dreadful performance by the Sacramento